Raider Nation. Thank you for joining us on the Only Nation podcast. Brought to you by the Raider Ramble and sponsored by Chucky's Thugs and now Betway. My name is Heidi, but you may know me as Kevlar Prom-Dress or even Raider Ladybug. I'm here with T3 Raider Facts, and we're ready to talk some Raiders football together.
And Heidi, as the off-season heats up, we'll continue to keep our optimism high, so let's get to it.
Today on the show, we'll talk about the defensive side of the ball. We'll look at some of the veterans, potential free agents, both coming and going, and then start assessing our needs going into the draft. Plus, we already know who the Raiders' first opponent will be in the upcoming season.
Okay, Raider Nation, we've already given away a customized Raiders jersey, but there's more great stuff coming up. Here's how you can get in touch with us throughout the off-season. Give us a call on the Only Nation podcast voicemail line at 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. You can also check us out on the web at onlynationpod.com.
Here's the latest Raider news.
The NFL announced that the Raiders will be helping to kick off the festivities during the Hall of Fame weekend. Las Vegas will take on the Jacksonville Jaguars at Fawcett Stadium in Canton, Ohio, on Thursday, August 4th. 2 days before the late Cliff Branch, former Raider and Patriot Richard Seymour, and Jaguar tackle Tony Boselli are all inducted into the Hall of Fame. The last time the Raiders were involved in a Hall of Fame game was back in 2006. This is also a homecoming for new head coach Josh McDaniels, who is a native of Canton.
You know, this sets up great for the Hall of Fame and for the Raiders. It used to be traditionally the Hall of Fame game would always have a connection or tie to one, if not both teams involved with Hall of Fame candidates going in. Then they kind of got away from that. But the fact that Cliff Branch is going in very, very late, he should have been in years ago. I think pretty much everybody agrees with that. There will be a lot of Raiders alumni there. There will be a lot of fans there, too, not just for the silver and black, but all across football, for the whole span of football. Tony Boselli deserves to get in, and I'm glad to see him in as well. But the focus really will be on the Raiders and on Raider Nation, not on the Jaguars. There is a possibility, and I heard this through some of the other broadcasts this past week, there is a possibility that the Raiders might end up playing Jacksonville again on a special designed schedule because Jacksonville is going to be playing one of their games overseas and they don't know who the opponent is. We do know that the Raiders are supposed to play Jacksonville in a road game. Now, where that road game remains to be seen, we'll just have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, I always enjoy the Hall of Fame game, no matter what team is playing, just because it's the first game of football season. And so I always look forward to it, and I almost always watch it. But this year I am especially going to be excited about it, just because, hey, it's the Raiders, and that means football season has really started. And I can hardly wait till that comes.
I'm going to try and see if I can get a ticket to go and actually be there in Canton, Ohio during Hall of Fame weekend. Once again, we'll see how things go in terms of travel restrictions and availability for schedule, but I've certainly got it circled on my calendar for now.
Well, that would be an experience that I would love to share with you. I know I can't, but if you have the opportunity, I hope you do go.
If I do go, I'll carry you with me in spirit.
Thank you. Isn't Homer planning on being there this year again?
He is planning on being there, and if in any way, shape, or form we can put something together, we certainly will do that.
Yeah, sounds good. The Raiders also announced the signing of free agent defensive tackle Andrew Billings. Originally selected by the Bengals in the 4th round of the 2016 draft, Billings spent 4 seasons in Cincinnati before signing with the Cleveland Browns in 2020. He has also spent time on both the Dolphins and Chiefs practice squads. Billings has played in 53 games, starting in 37 of them, and has recorded 81 tackles, 12 quarterback hits, and 3.5 sacks. To make room for him on the roster, the Raiders waived guard Jeremiah Putasi.
Now, I'm familiar with Andrew Billings, and there are some pundits out there who are very excited about his signing, and see him as making an impact on the team. I don't really see that. I see him as a depth piece, somebody who may make the team as a backup, but I'm not as high on him as other people have been talking. I've mentioned for a long time that the Raiders have not paid attention to the defensive line as well as to the linebacking core, which we'll talk about later. But this signing does not excite me. I am glad that they brought somebody in for depth, but I'm just not real high on this one.
Yeah, I think he's a definite depth piece. I could see him making the squad. I could also see him not making the squad, but I definitely would just put him down as a depth piece as well. Not necessarily a starter, but somebody who could come in rotationally. The Raiders desperately need a really high caliber defensive tackle on the line. They have needed one for forever. I know the middle linebacker position, they've been in the same boat. They have ignored that, and it has come back to bite them every year. But they really need a big old defensive tackle to set the stage and lead the line and just stuff the offense and make the defense a lot more effective.
And a young one at that, somebody who can come in for more than just 1 year.
Yeah, the Raiders really love the 1 and 2 year contracts, and even the 2 year contracts are a little rare. Seems like they try to do 1 year contracts with almost everyone. But then again, the way free agency has gone for us, we've been a lot better off just with those 1 year contracts. Whenever we've been signing players to multi-year contracts, that's when it hasn't been working. You know, Corey Littleton, Nick Kwiatkowski, LaMarcus Joyner, those are the ones that they've been on for a few years, and they just didn't work out.
Last year it paid off, and I am just thankful that we had Denzel Perryman and he came through. Otherwise, I'm not sure where we'd be in terms of the final standing. Once again, I think we're both in agreement that they need to bring in a dynamic piece on that defensive line, which I think has to occur during the draft and which I think needs to occur during the first round.
Yeah, Denzel Perryman was phenomenal last year. I don't know where he came from. He came out of nowhere. But, man, he made it into the Pro Bowl, and did he finish first in tackles in the entire NFL? If not, I know he is right at the top.
He was going into the last couple of weeks of the season. I don't know where it ended up. I'll have to go back and check the stats, and we can maybe do that a little later. But, he was way up there right toward the last part of the season.
Yeah, he's definitely a player that I would like to see us hold on to on a much longer term. Head coach Josh McDaniels sat down for an exclusive interview with Raiders.com Upon Further Review podcast this week to discuss early draft strategies and to talk about what he and GM Dave Ziegler are looking for when it comes to selecting potential future Raiders to come to Indianapolis. The article can be found by going to Raiders.com and searching McDaniels on Evaluating Draft Prospects.
I feel really good. Day by day, I feel even better about the McDaniels and Ziegler combination. I've heard it referred to already as McZiegler, kind of fondly and affectionately. So there you go. There's that moniker that's already been thrown out there. I feel good in terms of the fact that I really believe these guys have worked together for many years, doing it. And I know we've heard the Patriot way up one side and down the other, and people are tired of hearing that, particularly with the Raiders. But the thing that people have to understand is that traditionally, from an historical standpoint, Al Davis used to do things the Raiders way, which basically was against the grain of everything everybody else was doing. So what I feel good about with McDaniels and Ziegler is they're going to be looking at players and evaluating players the same way everyone else is. So they're doing it in the same way. They just want to do it better than everybody else, which is what the Patriots have been doing all along. They've been doing the same things everybody else has been doing. They've just been doing it better and more consistently. And that is something I want to see come into play for the Raiders organization now.
Yeah, and the Patriots have done really well in free agency. Their specialty hasn't even been the draft, although they definitely have some successful players from there. They've been signing those quick 1 year free agent deals, and they've been very successful. You can't look past the last 2 decades and say otherwise.
They haven't been afraid to let somebody walk. They let Jimmy Garoppolo go. They haven't been afraid and timid to say, okay, this guy, if he gets away, will be all right. I think in the past, the Raiders have been hesitant to do that, and as a result, have held on to people way too long.
Oh, definitely. And New England, they didn't want to pay people either. And they had no problem letting really good players walk. But they were able to fill in those holes pretty successfully with no-name players that ended up being stars for them.
And to the same degree, I will say this, and I'm going to mention a name that a lot of Raider Nation is going to throw daggers at as soon as they hear it. And the name is Randy Moss. Now, when Randy Moss came over to the Raiders, he was just looking at cashing a paycheck because he did not have faith in the organization, and the organization, quite frankly, didn't have faith in itself. And a lot of people said, if you go to the Raiders, you're just going to collect a paycheck, which is basically what he did. And he gave up and quit on the team. When he was signed later by the Patriots, he believed in the organization, and the organization believed that he could contribute in vital ways. Of course, he had a quarterback he believed in as well, and a head coach who'd already proven that he was a winner. And that made all the difference for Randy Moss. What I'm hopeful is now, with McDaniels and Ziegler having proven that, and having the skins on the wall, and having the pedigree, they can look and say, okay, we can trust these guys to put together a team, and we can have faith in an organization that's moving in the right direction. The Raiders haven't had that before. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this new refreshing approach and seeing how we can really take guys and motivate them to believe in something and to move and push in a direction altogether.
I will say one thing about the Raiders' free agency signings. At least we didn't sign Albert Hainsworth.
Yes.
We might have signed Moss, but at least we didn't sign Hainsworth. That was a disaster.
That is true.
Talk about someone who just wanted his check.
Now, I will go on record right now, and I am hoping that we do not sign a certain receiver who was just recently released by the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm not even going to mention his name.
Oh, if we were to sign him, I'd just throw myself off the top of the building right away. You wouldn't be able to talk me down.
I would be there to catch you.
I'd grab an ice pick and shove it through my temple on the way down.
Okay. All right. Maybe I wouldn't catch you.
Okay, so for discussion, last week we talked about the offensive line mostly, and some of the top current Raiders set to hit free agency. Today, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. We'll look at the defensive backfield first, then we'll group the linemen and linebackers together. And we'll finish by each sharing the top 5 things that this defense needs to do to improve on its overall performance from 2021.
Okay, so here's what we have so far on the back end. We have Abram and Merrick at the safeties and Hobbs in the slot. The corners last year were Casey Hayward and Trayvon Mullen, but Mullen is still kind of iffy at this point, and Hayward is seeking a big contract, and we both agree that he's probably going to be gone. Then at the corners for depth, the Raiders have Brandon Faison, Cravon LeBlanc, Keyshawn Nixon, Amik Robertson, and Desmond Trufant. And at the safety position, the Raiders also have Tyree Gillespie, Dallin Levitt, Roderick Teamer, Jordan Brown, and Natrell Jamerson. Now, I think Faison and Teamer, both Gus Bradley guys, will be gone. And I think Trufant's time with the silver and black is done also. I'd like to see both Nixon and Robertson be able to stick, but they need to find their respective places. Now, I am intrigued by Jordan Brown, though I will admit he is a long shot to make the team. I think Tyree Gillespie could be a good piece, but I just haven't seen enough of him on the field. Now, going into free agency, I know that everyone has been talking about the big fish, J.C. Jackson, but 4 years at around $72 million projected with over $50 million in guaranteed money, that's pretty rich for my blood, knowing that the linebacking core needs a lot of help. Now, Patrick Graham has ties to safety Jabril Peppers and former New England cornerback Stephon Gilmore, has that Patriots connection and would come much cheaper than J.C. Jackson. I've already mentioned previously on other shows how much I would love to bring in Joe Hayden on a 1, perhaps a 2-year deal. And I know, Heidi, you were really upset when the Raiders let Rasul Douglas walk last year. I'd like to see the Raiders bring in Peppers, at least one other guy, maybe Gilmore or Hayden, and then pick up a couple more in the draft.
I would not complain if we ended up with Stephon Gilmore at all. I would be very happy with that. Russell Douglas, I just hated that we got rid of him after not even giving him a shot, and he ended up taking over the league after he left.
He had a good year.
He had a very good year. As far as Abram and Morig at the safeties, I'm definitely cool with Morig staying. I think he's going to do a great job there. And putting Hobbs in the slot, I think we've found our slot corner for right now. Jonathan Abram, I think he'll be a Raider, but he has so much he still needs to work on, and he has so many weak areas. It's tough trying to stand behind him. I'm not sure keeping him around is really even a good idea. Casey Hayward and Trayvon Mullen. Loved Casey Hayward, but I agree. He is probably gone. Trayvon Mullen, he can still improve, and I would be okay with keeping him for sure. Brandon Faison did a great job. He is one of the Gus Bradley guys left over that I could see staying with us and being successful for another year. Is he a starting caliber defensive back in the NFL? Probably not, but man, he did a great job rotationally, and he was a valuable depth player that we desperately needed last year. Keshawn Nixon, Amik Robertson, I'm sure that the Raiders are probably going to keep at least one of them, but neither one of them have impressed me very much. I like them, but as players, they just don't float my boat. They don't impress me much. They don't impress me much.
There you go. Well, this is where the Patrick Graham imprint is going to really pay a huge difference. One or both of these guys, or maybe neither of these guys make the squad. Once again, we'll just have to see who else they bring in, what kind of systems they face, and what kind of schemes they play.
Yeah, and if we ended up with J.C. Jackson, I would be willing to pull the trigger on a contract that size because he would be a very valuable piece for the Raiders. I would be okay with us spending that kind of money on him. I really would.
I would love to have J.C. Jackson on the team, but I just think that there are several other holes that we have to fill, and I'm not sure that would be the biggest value for the dollar. Of course, it's not my money to spend, but I think there are more than one and probably more than two holes that need to be plugged, and we'll talk about some of those in a moment.
Yeah, and as far as big signings, the Raiders are going to be working on a contract extension with Max Crosby, and I would say that is probably more important than picking up J.C. Jackson.
I agree with you there.
I just see him as a more valuable player. J.C. Jackson, very good, would love to have him, but I would rather, if I had to choose between Max and J.C., I would choose Max.
Totally agree.
Even though they play totally, different positions.
Right.
Now, let's take a look at the front seven, or six, or five, depending on what schemes Patrick Graham decides to dial up. On the line, we have Solomon Thomas, Quentin Jefferson, Cleve Farrell, Darius Philon, Jonathan Hankins, Mad Max Crosby, Yannick Ngakoue, Malcolm Kuntz, Carl Nassib, Andrew Billings, Kendall Vickers, Jerry Green, and P.J. Johnson. Gerald McCoy came in last year and would have been great, but injuries and age caught up with him, and he may very well be done. Among the linebackers, the team still has Denzel Perryman, Corey Littleton, Nick Kwiatkowski, Nicholas Morrow, who is coming off an injury, Divine Diablo, Markel Lee, Patrick Onwasser, KJ Wright, and Justin Marsh Lillard.
Okay, let's start with the line. Now, Clee stays another year unless the Raiders can trade him. If I trade, I know he'll never garner a first-round pick, but maybe something still valuable. I'd like to see both Thomas and Jefferson stay, and I hope that Philon can bounce back from injury. Now, Nassib is probably gone. Big Hank may only have 1 or 2 more years left, and of course, Crosby and Ngakoue and Kuntz will all still be there. The fact that the Raiders haven't been able to land anyone solid other than Max over the years has really been a detriment to this team, and the draft needs to really concentrate on that this year, in my opinion, in the first round. I don't see any major players coming in via free agency. Now, as far as the linebackers go, aside from Perryman and the initial promise shown by Diablo, this group may be one of the weakest in the league. I hate to say that. You bring in a veteran like Anthony Barr or maybe Dante Hightower and then draft a linebacker in either round 1 or 2. In fact, the Raiders might need 2 young linebackers because I would love to see Diablo actually move back to safety where he belongs, in my opinion. Okay, if Merrick and Diablo are the safeties, then you kind of know where I'm heading with Abram. Trade him now. Get whatever value you can. Cut Littleton in June. Trade or cut Kwiatkowski and just redo this thing. Hell, I hope that Perryman decides to come back. This group, in my opinion, is going to be an even bigger question mark than the offensive line in 2022. And again, in my opinion, will be a bigger factor in determining whether or not this team makes it to back-to-back playoffs for the first time in 20 years.
I would say that Cleve Farrell could very well be gone this year. I know if the Raiders could get any type of draft capital for him, they would probably pull the trigger. For some reason, he's persona non grata. The stigma of being a 4th overall pick and not being the super high caliber elite defensive end has gotten to him. And he just might need a change of scenery. And because the Raiders aren't giving him a chance. And hopefully he hasn't lost too much confidence in himself because he really is a good player. It's just he's not that 4th overall good player.
And again, Gruden did this, and I think this is part of the Gruden mentality, which kind of carried over from Al Davis. If you got on his bad side, you were done. If you were even anywhere close to that doghouse, you might as well just stay there. I'm hoping that with Patrick Graham, there's a fresh scenery here and a fresh approach and a fresh attitude. But again, I still hope Clee comes in angry with an edge and with something to prove. Now, whether that's to up his value as much as possible to be traded to another team or whether it's to go ahead and say, look, I'm a Raider and I'm going to do all I can to max out and max my own value. If I'm working to get to another team or staying with the Raiders, do what I can. If I'm surrounded by some good, talented people who all believe in the same thing, and I trust in the leadership of Patrick Graham and what Ziegler and Josh McDaniels put together, we could really have something. But again, I'm like you. I'm hoping that the Raiders can trade and get some type of value for him because in the long run, I think Cleve Farrell is going to benefit more as a player if he moves on and changes scenery.
I think he's just going to be one of those players that you get him in a different system on a different team, and he could really excel.
If he does, that's great. More power to him. I would not be hesitant, and I would not kick myself saying, well, we should not have let him go. At this point, I think the decision should be pretty well defined. He's either going to stay or going to go. And I think once they make that decision, they just have to go all in on that.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that the change of scenery that Patrick Graham brings could be enough of a change of scenery. But I honestly could see the Raiders just dropping him or possibly even just releasing him. I really could. As far as Thomas and Jefferson go, I would love to keep them. Darius Philon did an incredible job. Hopefully he can come back from that injury. Carl Nassib is, I would say, almost definitely gone. In fact, I would say if he wouldn't have made his announcement last year, I think that he might have been gone last year. The Raiders just could not cut somebody after announcing that he was gay because they would have been crucified.
You're right. They would have been condemned in the court of public opinion had they done that. And the fact that Nassib's jersey did what it did, I think validated the fact that the Raiders hung on to him. And he actually ended up having a decent year when he was on the field.
Yeah, he really did. He saved that one game. Was it the Ravens game that he saved?
I believe so.
Yeah. The sack, fumble, whatever that was.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like him. I wouldn't have been surprised if he would have gotten cut last year had he not made that announcement.
And we had talked about that last year during the offseason. We wondered and kind of pondered over whether he would even make the roster or not.
Yeah. Jonathan Hankins, he's been a very solid player. He is not that defensive tackle that we need dominating the middle, but he has been one of our better linemen. So hopefully he will remain with us for another year or two. And of course, Crosby, love him, gotta hold on to him. Ngakoue still has 1 year left, and Crosby and Ngakoue, they could be scary. And Kuntz actually showed some real promise. So I would be looking forward to see what he can do in his second year. And yeah, linebackers, like I said, it's just been a position that the Raiders have ignored. They have not been drafting a linebacker in the first or second round. It's always fourth, fifth round, and then wondering why they haven't been successful in that position.
They haven't been listening to us.
Yeah.
The linebackers they've been drafting, let's draft a guy who hasn't played linebacker, and let's put him at linebacker.
Yeah. Divine Diablo, case in point.
And somebody the year before by the name of Tanner.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, how is he doing? What team has he ended up with?
Well, he was with Seattle last we checked, but that's the last we checked.
Yeah. You already know, and the listeners all know my opinion on wanting to change everyone's position when they're first coming into the league. It is not very successful. Not everyone is Matt Millen. It's not going to work with most players.
That is not how you hang on to a GM job.
Right. But as far as Littleton being gone, absolutely, I can see him gone. Kwiatkowski, I could see him gone. I just really hope that we hold on to Denzel Perryman and able to get him some help. I like Nicholas Morrow, but he, price-wise, he might be more than what the Raiders are willing to pay. What 5 things do you think the defense needs to do to improve in 2022? T3?
All right. Now, there's probably more than 5 things, but I'm just going to list 5 things right off the top. Number one, and Heidi, I'm in total agreement with you. I think the first thing that the Raiders need to do, first and foremost, is to re-sign Max Crosby. Don't let this thing linger. He has proven himself, and he is a leader of the team, and I think that's just one thing that should be done as a slam dunk before you do anything else. There are certain moves that just make sense within an organization, and I think this is one. So I'd like to see them go ahead and get this thing done and don't let it linger. The second thing is I would bring in a free agent linebacker, maybe 2. We've talked already on this show and previous shows about the fact that the Raiders have just not paid attention to the linebacker position. And they need to bring in somebody who's proven. Perryman may not be back. Nicholas Morrow may not be back. And we already see what kind of faith we have in the other linebackers that are there. Not much. So we definitely need to bring in a free agent linebacker, if not 2. The third thing is bring in a free agent defensive back, maybe 2. We've already discussed 2 of them just a few minutes ago. We talked about Stephon Gilmore. We mentioned J.C. Jackson, but I think we don't bring him in because he's just simply be too much money. Number 4, we trade Jonathan Abram. And again, some people in Raider Nation might not agree with this, but I think you want to go ahead and trade him now. Get whatever trade value you can, maybe a second round, maybe a third round. And I'm not angry with Jonathan Abram. I don't hate the player. I'm just saying that I haven't seen enough of him in the time he's been with the Silver and Black. I don't trust him with where he's at. So I think you trade him and get what you can, and you move Divine Diablo into that spot on the roster. So you have Diablo and Merrick as your safeties. And then the 5th thing is I think you dump Corey Littleton in June and save that salary unless you can find a trade partner before then. If we could find a trade partner, somebody who would take him on, I think you jump at that chance and get him gone. And if he hooks on with another team and does great like he did with the Rams, that's great. I'm happy for him. So be it. I'm tired of seeing Corey Littleton on this team and not doing anything.
Totally agree with you. As far as Jonathan Abram goes, I think if the Raiders could get a 3rd round pick for him, they would jump at it. I don't think a 2nd round is very realistic, and it's definitely not going to be a 1st round.
No.
But if they could get a 3rd round, I think they would jump at that deal. Abram he's a tough hitter, but he ends up hurting himself, and he is worthless in coverage. He's very valuable to the offensive team he's playing against, but as far as the Raiders' defense goes, he's not valuable in coverage at all.
Right.
But yeah, bringing in some experienced linebackers, I think that drafting one would be important, but also bringing in the free agent linebacker would be a very good move for the Raiders. Corey Littleton, sorry, Charlie, it just has not worked out. Making too much money doing nothing. I don't think we could find a trade partner for him. I think he's just going to be, a cut, and he's going to be sent on his merry way. All right, it's time now for T3's Top 3.
T3's Top 3.
All right, Heidi, this is this week's T3's Top 3. Number 1, I would like to see an angry Cleve Ferrell this season. I already mentioned that once. I'd like to see the guy from Clemson who wreaked havoc on opposing backfields and was then brought in as one of the foundational pieces for this team for the future. I still think that if he ends up going to another team, he's going to end up being a success. And it's not his fault that he's been saddled with the label of a number 4 overall pick, which he should not have been. But I still think he's got a chance with the Raiders. I'll be pulling for him. If not, let's try to get some kind of draft capital back. Number 2, right tackle. It's funny, but we're right where we were a year ago. So do you draft a true right tackle this year and make that a free agency priority? Well, as I've already stated, a veteran right tackle needs to be the initial play in free agency. But I say double down and also bring in a guard, or someone who can play up and down the line, especially if Nick Martin ends up walking. I'm still sticking with Morgan Moses, who I mentioned on our last show, and then maybe a guy like Ted Karras, who comes from New England. He can start at guard, but he also has experience at center. And once again, as I mentioned, there's that Patriot connection once again. Number 3, here are my top 5 draft prospects in the first round for right now. And this is totally based on what I believe the biggest needs are and who might still be on the board at number 22. Number 1, top of my list, Georgia defensive tackle Jordan Davis. Number 2 is Devin Lloyd, the inside linebacker out of Utah. Number 3 is Georgia linebacker Nakobe Dean. Number 4 is Tulsa offensive tackle Tyler Smith. And number 5 is Northern Iowa offensive tackle Trevor Penning. And I'm sure that'll change at least 2 or 3 times before the draft. But that's it for now. And that is this week's Top 3.
Thank you, T3. We've already talked about Cleve Ferrell. I would love to see him have an impact and be a great Raiders player this year. I just think there's a really good chance that he's going to be dropped and not make the team at all. And like both of us have said in this episode, it's not his fault that he was picked 4th overall. And he wasn't able to live up to that position. Good player, just not that dominant one that we needed. Right tackle. Oh, wow. That offensive line, it needs a lot of help. Alex Leatherwood, I do not see him being the right tackle. I'm not even sure I see him being the right guard. I'm not sure if he's going to be a starter this year. He had a very rough rookie season. I don't think he flashed that potential that Colton Miller did. Colton Miller at least flashed potential his rookie year, even though statistically it was a very poor season. I didn't see those flashes in Leatherwood. I did see marked improvement throughout the course of the year, and once he made it to right guard, he was a lot more successful. But yeah, we still need that right tackle. Whether you're looking in the draft or free agency, just please do not bring back Trent Brown. Please.
Agreed. And if you did bring him back, he wouldn't be on the field anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be in the medical tent eating Twinkies.
Right. Or fruit roll-ups.
No, because there's actual fruit in those, and Trent Brown don't do fruit. He does Twinkies.
That's true.
He does Twinkies and tacos.
You got a point.
And as far as the draft goes, I totally agree with you on some of these players. They could definitely make a big impact. There's still the need for a wide receiver as well, whether we're looking on the free agency market for that or in the draft for that. But we can't forget about that position either.
Well, it's a really deep receiver class coming out. We've already seen in the combine, there were 11 receivers who ran sub 4.5 40s. So there's a lot of really speedy receivers in the draft. And any of those, I think, could come on. If we looked at what Justin Jefferson did, he was I think, the fourth or fifth wide receiver drafted, and yet he turned out to be an excellent value. And I think if we don't bring in somebody like Allen Robinson, I think we could probably bring in one of those young receivers with the second round pick and still do pretty well.
And I would want to get a young receiver over Allen Robinson myself. He hasn't had it for the last couple of years. I'm not sure if he'll be able to recapture that form that he once had.
I think some of that may be who was throwing him the ball.
Could have something to do with it. That is true.
He was in Chicago, and I think the only thing that I would trust more than the quarterbacks wearing the Chicago Bears uniform would be the wind coming off the lake. And you can't trust that at all.
You can trust that it's there.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
All right, give us a call at 904-701-8667. Leave a voicemail or text message at that number, or send in a message via social media, and we'll share your thoughts. And what are we doing on Raider Roots this week, T3?
Okay, we did 1986 last week, so this week will be 1987. There was an ugly player strike, and also a superstar emerged for the Silver and Black. Who was that superstar, you ask? Well, Bo knows.
Legend.
Yes.
All right, T3, why don't we find out what we do or don't know today?
It's time for another edition of Did You Know? In this segment, I will ask Heidi and our entire listening audience a Raiders-related question with 3 multiple-choice answers to choose from, so just give it your best guess. Here's this week's question. Now, back in the day, John Madden had some pretty quirky individuals on those Raider teams, and they did some strange things. Which member of the Raiders used to do this? He would, after the home games, he would ride his motorcycle into a local hospital and check himself in so that he could get tended to by the nursing staff and then also get a good night's sleep. Was this player A, John Matuzak, B, Skip Thomas, or C, Lester Hayes? Heidi, what do you think?
I'm trying to picture John Matuzak on a motorcycle. Be like one of those, bears that rides a little bike in the circus.
Probably so.
I'm just going to go with A, John Matuzak.
The answer is B, Skip Thomas. And here's the funny thing that a lot of people don't know. He was nicknamed Dr. Death, not because of what he would do on the field, but he got that nickname because when he would show up for practice, he would look like death warmed over. So they started calling him Dr. Death. He did not know how to take care of himself. So after the games, he would hop on his motorcycle and he would check himself into a hospital. In fact, he would actually drive the motorcycle into the hospital, get himself checked in, go to a hospital room, lay himself down in a bed, and demand IVs be plugged in, and then get a good night's sleep. And they would just oblige him and take care of that. So it's kind of funny. That kind of thing would be able to happen during the 70s. Probably not today, but that's just a little bit of insight there as to the inside world of Dr. Death, Skip Thomas. And that is this week's version of Did You Know?
Well, the 70s were definitely a different decade. A lot of things happened then that wouldn't be allowed today.
That is correct. Jack Tatum would not survive in this year's NFL.
No. He would definitely, yeah. Yeah. He would be a pariah. He would be a pariah.
Right. Of course, with those hard hits, the immaculate reception deception probably would not have happened either.
It was tipped.
It was an illegal catch.
Yeah, it was invalid catch.
Correct. And we all know that. Just like we know, yes, the Tuck Rule game, it was a fumble.
It was.
All right, Raider Nation. Now it is time for Heidi's Heroes.
Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
This week's hero is a gentleman who is unfortunately no longer with us. But his name is George Anderson, and he is the former Raiders athletic trainer. He was inducted into the PFATS Hall of Fame. In an article by Rachel Gosson on Raiders.com, she wrote, George Anderson, head athletic trainer for the Raiders from 1960 to 1994, has been posthumously inducted as one of 5 members of the inaugural class of the Professional Football Athletic Trainers Society's Hall of Fame. Anderson, who passed away in 2012, was the first head athletic trainer in franchise history. He was also known as an innovator, developing a knee brace for Raider legend Ken Stabler after the quarterback sustained an MCL injury in the 1970s. The knee brace was eventually called the Anderson Knee Stabilizer and would go on to be used universally. He was inducted into the National Athletic Trainers Association Hall of Fame in 1986. These former professional football athletic trainers and PFATS members embody just what it means to provide best-in-class healthcare to the athletes we serve, said PFATS President Reggie Scott. They have dedicated most of their lives to the profession of athletic training and the organizations they worked for. They are among the most recognized and respected members of our professional society, and we consider them members of our family. Now, we are excited to recognize them as Hall of Famers. In addition to the PFATS Hall of Fame, Anderson and the other members of the inaugural class will be inducted into the Professional Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, as recipients of the Award of Excellence for their contributions to the game. George, we salute you. 1960 to 1994, devoted your life to the team and to our players. Hats off to you, my good sir. Thank you for all your work. And George Anderson, you're my hero this week.
Rest in peace, Mr. Anderson, or Dr. Anderson. And just a little side note on that, back in 1994, the team's last season in Los Angeles, Dr. Robert Huizinga, who was a former team physician, wrote a behind-the-scenes book that detailed questionable practices by the front office and coaching staff, including pressuring team doctors to send players back into action before they were healed and asking them to ignore injuries that would have kept players on the sidelines longer. Al Davis, asked Anderson to participate in a TV interview and rebut the accusation in Huizinga's book, You're Okay, It's Just a Bruise. But Anderson declined and subsequently was forced to retire. Anderson was not comfortable speaking out against Huizinga, who had been treating Anderson's wife, Marcy, for Hodgkin's disease. And Anderson commented, nobody gave themselves to the Raiders. Actually, his daughter said this. She said, nobody gave more themselves to the Raiders than my dad. He was so dedicated to Al and the Raiders, and having to leave the team just devastated him. And in a 1996 interview, Anderson told Sports Illustrated, the word loyalty is bandied about much too casually in the Raiders organization. For Al Davis, loyalty means you be loyal to me, I'll think about being loyal to you. And this is kind of an odd, sad side note. But again, Anderson was loyal to the team and his players and very much revered by his players. You've heard Phil Villapiano numerous times on different documentaries talking about Anderson being a master at pads and how he would always construct all these pads, particularly for the defensive players, which they used to their advantage. So a lot of things can be said to George Anderson, but one thing that can be said is that he was loyal to the team through and through.
And that's really all that you can ask for. Al, he ran everything a little bit different. And so if you bumped heads with him, you got to go on a permanent vacation. But that just doesn't change that, he is the Raiders' first head athletic trainer, and he was there for some 35 years. And man, that just makes you my hero this week. Enjoy your time in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Homer is missing in action this week. He is moving, so we do not have a flag to give away yet, but please message us. Let us know if you are interested in winning that Chucky's Thugs flag. We'll get you entered, and when Homer's back, we will be able to get that to the winner.
want to have him be the one to give that away. So, and again, I'm reaching out to everybody who listens to the podcast, particularly those who are connected with Homer down in the Central Texas area. Please give us a call, leave us a message, show us your support, and we'll put your name in the hat for the flag.
Yeah. And that about does it for this week on the Only Nation podcast. If you'd like to help support the show, you can send in a donation at paypal.me/onlynationpod. You can find me, Heidi Stabbert, on social media as @KeblerPromDress on Twitter and Instagram, or Heidi Stabbert on Facebook. You can also find me on YouTube on Captain Jack Rackham's channel every other Tuesday night. I join the DC wench Peggy Holmes and Andrea Trask on the Captain and His Wenches show.
All right, Raider Nation, even though it's the off season, keep up with us and we'll keep you up to date on all the Raiders' comings and goings. Send us your name and address so we can send you some free Raiders swag and podcast stickers. Call us and tell us what you want to know. Throw us an interesting nugget that we could use in one of our upcoming episodes. And become a part of what we're doing right here. Remember, this is the Only Nation, and we want you to be a part of it. So call us 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. Call us now and join the Only Nation podcast family. There are two easy ways to find me on social media. You can send me a tweet at T3_sports703, as several of you do, or you can hit me up on Facebook at Tom, Thom Jones. I want to also thank you for all your continued support of the Raider Roots podcast. This week, we'll be going back to the year 1987.
As always, we look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, everyone, go Raiders.
We are not just a nation, we are the only nation.
Raiders.